What is something that you can do if your child says that they have a stomach ache and you sense that it's not physical? You sense that it's perhaps emotionally related. There's some stress component involved in their stomach ache, which happens very, very often. So I've seen this many, many times. I've actually worked with children and adolescents for over 20 years. I'm a licensed clinical counselor. I actually developed a technique as a result of working with children and adolescents, particularly with their emotions. And I'm going to teach you a specific tool today that's an element of that technique called the Feel Better Fast technique. I'm going to teach you a very practical, simple, effective way to help to reduce the intensity of the emotions and therefore reduce stomach aches. So let's talk about, first of all, why children, and actually adults as well, this is going to actually work for you as well. If you're an adult listening, maybe you're a parent or you're a teacher or you're a school counselor or a nurse or a pediatrician or whatever capacity in which you work with children, whether it's professionally or just as your role in your relationships with children, this will actually help you as well because we all experience stress and anxiety. And what tends to happen when we experience anxiety and worry, which happens, based on different stressors, it tends to impact the stomach. Why the stomach? So let's talk about, I'm actually going to post an image on the screen that shows you a very specific pulse point. It's called the Meridian access point. It's based in Chinese medicine. It's associated with the element of the earth. More specifically, it's associated with the organs of the spleen and the stomach. Okay? The stomach. And what are the emotions that are associated with this specific point, a pulse point? We're going to actually use this in this technique. Very simple, very effective. Emotions such as anxiety, worried, lack of control, feeling nervous. So does that ring a bell for any of you? Feeling nervous or worried or, anxious about something that's out of your control. Now, sometimes you might be able to pinpoint what is the reasoning, the emotional component, the stressor, the trigger that's actually causing the worry for your child or the child that you're working with. You might be able to pinpoint that. You may not be able to. The child may know exactly what's bothering them. They may not. And it's okay. Either way, this specific tool can help. I'm going to give you an example. When I was working as a clinician in a school, I was working in an elementary school in Northern California, and I can give you a number of cases, but there's one specific that stands out to me. There was a mom that showed up in the office and she was kind of, at her wit's end trying to figure out how to get her son in the school because he had major stomach aches. He was super anxious about coming to school and he refused to get out of the car. So he's out in the car. Mom's like, I don't know how to get my kid into school. And so the principal asked me, hey, Lori, will you go out and speak with this boy and see if you can work your magic? And they named me the child whisperer at that school. The staff collaborated and said, we're going to call Lori the child whisperer because I just have a way with working with children. And I think some of these tools and techniques that I learned over the years that have been really helpful can actually help you become a child whisperer as well. So I went out and I spoke with the little boy. And I honestly, this was many years ago, so I don't remember exactly if he was able to articulate why he was so worried or why he had such a stomach ache and why he was so anxious about starting the day at school. But regardless of whether he did or didn't, I instructed him to do this simple tool, and I did it with him. So if you're watching this and you actually want to do this with your child, do it with them. Demonstrate it and actually do it with them. I think there's power in a child actually seeing an adult do something and demonstrate it. They're modeling emotional regulation. Okay, so I instructed him to touch that specific pulse point. It's the yellow point that you see on your screen. The point that's associated with the stomach and more specifically with emotions such as anxiety and worry and fear. Well, I would say anxiety and worry and, just nervous. Okay. So I had him touch that pulse point. So I'm going to actually demonstrate it. Okay. So I'm not sure if image is going to be reversed on your end, but I'm going to actually touch the actual point on the inside of my right wrist. Okay. I'm not sure if it looks like it's on the left or the right, because I'm not sure if the video is reversed, but I'm touching that middle point, that yellow point on the inside of my right wrist. So on the inside, if you notice on the chart, there's a pulse point that's above where the wrist bends. And then there's 1, 2, 3 below where the wrist bends. Okay. So 1, 2, this is the point right here. This is the point. I'm going to reach under and touch that specific point. Okay. The pulse point that's associated with anxiety and worry and the stomach. Okay. Then you're going to have the child, and you'll do this for yourself as well. Place the open palm across the forehead. Why? There are points here, 2 points midway between your eyebrow and your hairline that are actually associated with emotions and emotional regulation. So whether you actually touch like that or you just place the palm across the forehead, which is the most common way, sometimes people don't want to touch their whole forehead. Maybe they have acne or something like that. So you can touch just those 2 points if you'd like. But for most people, it's easiest just to place the palm across the forehead. Okay. So you're touching that pulse point, palm across the forehead, and then you take some nice, slow, deep breaths as you're instructing the child to think about whatever it is that's making them feel worried or anxious or nervous. Now, if they don't know what it is, that's okay too. Have them just focus on the feeling. So for this child, for example, they're refusing to get out of the vehicle and go into the school because they're feeling so anxious. So for him, that emotion was so active, he was able to just sit with it and notice it. And sometimes I'll even ask the child, where do you feel it in your body? What do you notice in your body? And for some kids and some adults as well, you might be able to notice maybe some tightness somewhere, or you might feel like butterflies in your stomach, or you might feel tightness in your stomach. It might feel like a hard rock in your stomach, or you might actually feel it in your shoulders or your jaw or your head or whatever. You can also ask the child, where do they feel it in their body? And they can even just connect with the discomfort, the physiological discomfort that they feel in their body. So whether they are able to identify the stressor. So let's just say, for example, the child does identify the stressor. Maybe there's a little bully in their class and they were harassed for like all last week, and they're afraid to go back into the classroom because they're afraid that, this bully is going to be mean to them, for example. You can have them, even if they don't want to verbalize what it is, even if they don't want to tell you what it is, but they know what it is, you can even ask them to just focus on what they know it is. They don't even have to tell you. That's the coolest thing about this tool. One of the coolest things about this tool is, I've worked with so many clients, children, adolescents, and adults. And there are some times where, people they don't want to tell you. They know what it is, but they don't feel comfortable telling you. They don't even have to tell you. And they can actually resolve this. Okay. So you're having them touch that pulse point, hand across the forehead, take some nice, slow, deep breaths. These 3 things together is the synergy that actually changes the physiology of the emotion. It neutralizes the trigger, the thing that actually is activating that unwanted emotion in the first place. It is literally diffusing it. It is so cool. It is so cool to see what actually happens in the brain on functional MRIs of what happens in the brain before and after this type of technique. Before, the brain is like activating, like it's active. It's like, oh my gosh, there's a fire. The fire alarm is going off. Oh, there's a fire. And after, there's a calmness. It's as if the fire was never there, or the fire went away, So pulse point, emotional points, deep breath, deep breaths for probably, I would say 1 to 2 minutes or so. For children, it actually might even be less than that. Kids are usually a lot quicker, generally speaking, at resolving emotions than adults are. They're very resilient. They amaze me. Sometimes you can actually see them shift emotions and actually feel better in as little as like 30 seconds. But the breath is very powerful in neutralizing it. So imagine that the emotion is like this big fire. We're going to use a fire as an example. Okay. So there's a big fire, and the fire is representative of the trigger, the stressor, the worry, the nervousness, the anxiety. Okay. So some fires are just like a little, like, mid-sized. Some fires are like huge, and sometimes it's just a little fire. You can even ask the child, how big is that emotion? They can show you with their hands. It's like this big, it's this big, or it's really big. That'll kind of give you a gauge too of how much space this emotion is taking up in their mind and their body. For older children and adolescents, you can actually ask them to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most big it can ever be, the most stressful, 1 being very, very minimal. So depending on the age of the child or adolescent that you're working with, you can either have them show you with their hands how big is that emotion, or using a scale like 1 to 10. And that kind of just gives you an idea of how much space this is taking up, how much, what are they perceiving it to be? How stressful is that? Okay. So as they're touching that specific pulse point that's associated again with the stomach and those emotions such as nervousness, anxiety, lack of control, coupled with the pulse points, coupled with the breath, with every breath that they take, well, they're connected to those points. And they're thinking about the thing that bothers them with every single breath that they're taking. It is as if they're taking a fire extinguisher and they're extinguishing the fire. Okay? So every breath, it's a swoop of water. Another breath, swoop of water. Another breath, swoop of water. So again, imagine if the emotion is like a mid-sized fire, maybe they rate it a 5 out of 10. It may only take 30 seconds, 45 seconds for them to extinguish the fire, extinguish that emotion, neutralize that emotion, change the physiology of that emotion. If it's a larger one, it may take up to a couple minutes or so. How do you know that it's been resolved? Here's one of the things that you're going to notice most often in the body language as you're actually watching. Now you're doing this with your child or with the child that you're working with, right? You're doing it along with them, but just peek and just watch what's happening with their body language. Because what often happens when they get to the point of actually resolving it, where it's like, I only need 1 more of water to extinguish the fire, 1 more breath, you'll notice often what you'll notice is they'll do this. They'll sigh. Almost always, not always, but it is a sure indicator that something shifted. So watch their body language. When you notice they start to get to that point where they're, maybe initially there's constriction, maybe there's shortness of breath, or there's like, their shoulders might be kind of hunched like this towards their ears. You're going to notice them start to relax. And usually when they've shifted that emotion, you notice them do this. There's kind of this ease that comes into their mind and their body. And you'll notice this too if you do it for yourself as an adult. Okay? So practice this for yourself as well. Okay, so I hope this really helps you. This has been coming up quite a few times in the last few months. And in terms of inquiries, I'm noticing people asking questions about this specifically and what to do. Like if my child has a stomach ache and I'm sensing that it's not physical, what do I do? Like for that mother, for example, that brought her child to school, she was able to get him in the vehicle, but she could not get him out of the vehicle into the school. And she's like, what can I do? So when I did that tool with that child, guess what happened? He wasn't like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to go into class now. It wasn't like super radical transformation, but it was enough for him to be like, okay, I'm ready to go into class. And he got out of his vehicle. I held his hand, walked him into the school, walked him into the classroom. That's a success. And that was also a sign that he had a reduction in stress on his mind and his body. That's the whole reason I'm sharing this, is because, oh man, I want the children and the adults to have less stress and actually use something that's really effective. And this does not take years. Like I've actually worked with kids that have been in therapy for 6 months, 2 years, 3 years, just talking about the issues. What often happens in talk therapy when you just keep talking about the issues is it just keeps, it's like blowing on the fire, right? Rather than putting water and extinguishing the fire, it's like blowing on the fire, and then the fire just reignites. And so it puts this tremendous amount of unnecessary stress on the mind and the body by talking about the stressor over and over and over and over again. You have to use tools that actually get to the root of it and extinguish it. Imagine a firefighter showing up to your house. You have a kitchen fire and it's just starting to get out of control and you're, freaking out. And the fireman shows up and he just starts blowing oxygen on the fire. You'll be like, what in the world? This is not effective firefighting. You need to use water, right? So with emotions and emotional regulation, you need to get to the root. Emotions are physiological. So why not use a technique that works physiologically? That's what this tool will do. Okay. Now, if you're like, well, what about other emotions? Oh, I could talk for hours about it. Leave it in the comments. If you have a specific emotion or physical symptom that you're curious about, leave it in the comments below. I'll create more videos. But one of the other things you can check out is my free stress tool. When you click on the link to the Stan store, which is basically where it has a lot of my free stuff and services and things like that. One at the very top, I believe it's at the very top or towards the top, it'll say my number one stress tool, the Pulse Point stress tool. Download that. It's going to be a short video demonstration. We'll show you, it's similar to what I just taught you now, but you're actually going to be using all the pulse points. It's really great for just emotional regulation in general. Okay. So it's great for any human being of all ages. I would say from ages 4 and up. Okay. Any human being. Why any human being? Because we experience emotions. We're emotional creatures. It's an emotional regulation tool. Okay. So download that. And you can use that any day, anytime. You can teach it to your child, your teenager, whomever. Actually, what I've noticed too, when I've taught children this tool, they actually go out and teach their friends and they teach their parents. It's very cute. So download that number one stress tool. If you're looking for something that, if you want more specific support for, let's say for yourself or for your child, let's say you're doing some of these strategies and you're like, you know what, there's actually so much extra stuff that my child is experiencing or that you are experiencing as the caregiver, the clinician, the school counselor, the parent, the teacher, whomever, and you need some additional support for yourself, some emotional healing. You can also check out my single sessions. I offer single sessions, and I also have some half-day intensives for those people who are really wanting to fast track and really go deep really fast. You can check out that link below as well. I have very strong confidence that this tool will help you. If you get stuck, if there's something that's not working, leave a comment below because I can guarantee you it will help. Okay. So, and I'm happy to troubleshoot that with you. So if you're like, I tried it and it didn't seem to work, I'm happy to troubleshoot that with you because I'm telling you, I've done this so many times and I've taught so many other people, clinicians, school counselors, even coaches, people that are helping other people with their own healing process and like roadblocks. And because what are roadblocks? They're emotional memories from our past. There's a charged emotional memory. It's like a fire lingering from the past, right? So I'm happy to troubleshoot with any of you guys if you have any questions. So also just let me know if you've tried this and you're like, hey, this actually worked. I posted something similar to this on my TikTok channel probably a few years ago, and it has, I don't know, thousands of saves. So a lot of people have been using it and commenting that's been really effective, really helpful. So you can also save this video as well. Save it to a playlist or, save it for later. And again, check out the stress tool, the number one stress tool. You can add that to your toolbox for emotional regulation. I think I covered most of it. I mean, and I could deep dive into this. And actually, one of the things, if you really want to learn more, this is for people who are just eager to learn more about maybe the science behind mind-body connection or psychosomatics, or what does it mean, what's associated with the liver, what's associated with the gallbladder, what's associated with the heart, or, all those different things. You can actually check out my mini course as well. I have a free mini course, one of the videos, and I'll link that below in the description as well. If you want to dive deeper, and again, it's a mini masterclass. It doesn't even go as in depth as I go in my advanced training when I'm teaching other people the Feel Better Fast technique, and more specifically, the advanced Feel Better Fast technique. I go deeper into the science of the mind-body connection, and more specifically like organs and glands and the Chinese medicine. So it's really fun stuff. But if you want to just kind of get a pretty good deep dive overview, that's like a surface deep dive. It's not super deep dive. It's kind of like below the surface, but not too deep. Check out that mini master course on the mind-body connection. Okay, so I hope this has been helpful, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.